Alrighty, hello. On today, shut the fuck up! I'm doing it now. Are you fucking ready? Good. Don't answer. Fuck it, I'm going. Alrighty, hello. And on today's episode, I got a buddy of mine, Brian Bitton. How are you doing today?
Good, Bryce. How are you? Thanks for having me.
For sure. Thanks for coming on. Now, for those who don't know you, even in the slightest, what's your current title? What's your job? What do you do?
Well, I am a medical laboratory scientist. I just work in the labs in the hospitals, and nurses send me, just patient samples, blood, urine, body fluids, stool, tissues. I just, they order tests, and I run those tests, and I send the results to them so that they could progress with patient care.
So you're not doing the actual needle work on patients. You get the specimens afterwards and work on the machinery side.
Mostly the machinery side, and after they collect it, occasionally I do go to the OR, gowned up and all, and I'll help with bone marrow collections on cancer patients.
Hmm.
For the most part, I'm kind of just handing the physician or the nurse practitioner stuff that they need to collect the bone marrow. I'm not doing any actually like poking myself, but I'll be there right next to them in the OR and making sure that they actually did get bone marrow. I'll check the slides. Once they give me the sample, I'll look for it. Like, it's called little spicules. It kind of has some light refractory. I'll go in the OR and help them do that and make sure they have enough volume for all the tests that they have and help with anything else that they need while I'm in there. That's just occasional, though.
Gotcha. And so are you in any kind of schooling at the moment for that, or are you just doing the job full time?
Nope, I'm just doing the job full time. I was going to school for it, so I had to get my bachelor's of science in medical laboratory science. You can get into the field with a couple different bachelor degrees, but if you get it in medical lab science and you go take a national certification exam, you get paid more per hour. So that's what I did, so that I could try to increase my salary potential, I guess you could say.
So a person needs a bachelor's to have your job.
You can get an associate's of medical laboratory science. It's called your MLT degree. It's just 2 years. You do a few prerequisite classes for it, and then it's still paid less than a bachelor's of MLS, and they inherently just have fewer responsibilities. They can't do as much, but they have the same knowledge set essentially. It's just they don't go through as many uh, credit hours, I guess.
Gotcha. And is there a flip side in that there's people who get masters and PhDs in this and they're even more advanced than maybe even you in that kind of line of thought?
Yep, so they actually do have a master's of MLS. Once you get the bachelor's and you're working in the field, there's some at some places not really like a need to go get your master's in it. A lot of people will go get the master's in it because it's way more in depth than the bachelor's program, and you can even do specialties like specialty in hematology, blood banking, chemistry, microbiology, if you so choose. And at some places that will equate to higher pay or potential promotions, but for the most part, you don't necessarily need it if you don't want to. I would think that the bachelor's is probably the best route to go if you want to just truly open as many doors as possible.
Is the bachelor experience for the medical lab science degree, at least specifically, is it like mini lab or mini med school? Is it like regular college and that you pretty much just go to lectures and such? How much hands-on experience do you get in your bachelor time?
That varies by the school that you're doing it with. So, like when I went to Utah Tech and we did it, it was 4 semesters, and the first 3 semesters were just lecture lab, and then the fourth semester we got sent out to a different site and we did a semester's worth of actual hands-on clinical rotations. So I had to go like I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I floated around different hospitals there, and I had to do like a week or two of molecular, 3 weeks of microbiology, 2 weeks of chemistry, like 5 weeks of blood bank, and I pretty much just go there and I work and they teach me things and I'll go help do stuff. So that's when I initially started going to help on bone marrows or sometimes with their in their transfusion department at the University of New Mexico. I would go and help with delivering blood for their massive transfusions that they had. And they had a lot just because they're the only level one in the whole state. So I got a lot of good experience there. And then, especially with like the reference laboratory, I got to go see a lot of microbiology stuff that my peers did not. So I got to see a lot of like
Mm.
parasitology, mycology. There was all sorts of different bacteria and mycology there that would grow in the patient population as opposed to say other places. For the most part, hospitals just send stuff to those big reference labs. So it was really kind of cool to go float at a reference lab for 6, 7 weeks and just kind of really apply what I learned through the first 3 semesters of lectures in lab.
That's cool. So is the bachelor's degree still 4 years? Like, does it take a normal person any longer having to do with that extra hands-on portion near the end?
No. So if you were on like a actual regimen, the 4 year plan, you can get it done in time. That rotation semester was just built into the program, at least at Utah Tech. It's like if you got in at Utah Tech, you were automatically full time in person, and then it was just 3 semesters, and then that fourth one there was no lecture or lab. You just went where some of your top choices were, and if they matched, then that's where you went. So you could get it done in 4 years. I took 6 years to get it just because I did school part time. Well, I figured out what I wanted to do.
So, on that vein of trying to figure out what you wanted to do, what made you think to go into med lab work and stick with it this long?
I think unlike a lot of my laboratory peers, I had a parent who worked in a hospital lab, so I kind of already inherently knew that that was a job field. If you think of a hospital, you for the most part think of doctor, nurse, pharmacist, just some of those ones that like patients would actually see if they were to go into their doctor's office or the ER or have a surgery. You don't think about the people you don't see. So I knew what
Sure.
it was prior to investigating it. What I originally wanted to do was med school, but I figured out that wasn't the path that I wanted to go on. So I just kept investigating the lab program, interviewed some lab people that my mom knew, and then figured I would just go for it. The job always seemed recession proof growing up. So that was something that I always wanted was stability and like a sense that I was helping, but I didn't necessarily want to be hands on in the patient room. So I get to do more of the behind the scenes stuff, which is really fun in my opinion.
Was there anything explicit about medical school that made you kind of hesitant about it? I know my own reasoning for deciding not to was just kind of shadowing enough doctors and not really enjoying the process of being a Western doctor. It's really in and out, very quick. There's not a lot of patient time that I saw, so that kind of turned me away. So, was there anything explicitly about med school or anything in that vein that was kind of like, oh, yeah, this is definitely, I'm going to go over here now?
Yeah, there was a few things. Most of it was the work life balance that the doctors did not have, whether that was pathologist, cardiologist, intensivist, or hospitalist. Because a lot of them seemed just in general kind of depressed. There was a couple that I would talk to. It's like, "Do you see your kids?" And occasionally, I'd miss baseball games, or I'd miss band concerts, or I wasn't around the house a lot, to meet like their close friends because I was always on call and called in or doing long 12 hours or sometimes 24-hour shifts. And then some of the other ones that I would talk to were like, this job's caused one or two and one for one doctor a third divorce. So just really
God.
seeing the lack of work life balance and like general happiness, like kind of it's not worth all that all those years of school to get into med school, and then all those years in med school, and then your residency and your fellowship, and then just having your hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt piled onto that. I didn't think it was worth it. Like I thought, yeah, it's a high paying job, but I'm still gonna be broke because I have to pay it all back. And then now I'm just depressed with no work life balance. So I just went, no, I'm gonna wash my hands of that, and I'm gonna do this because I was able to just to see that my mom working in the lab had a work life balance, and she
Mm,
wasn't stressed about any sort of recession or like a slowdown at work. So that was just something that I wanted.
gotcha. That makes sense. It's good that you recognize that it was going to be an issue for you and that you chose to take care of yourself. Really, like the money thing can be an issue too. Like paying back all that debt initially, but then to find that, like, hey, I want to make sure that I can be happy enough to have a life outside of work. And not that we want to tell everyone listening, hey, don't go to med school, life's going to suck forever. There obviously need to be some paradigm shifts to help the medical field and make it to where people aren't getting burned out like that. That's not a conversation we're really having right now. But keep in mind, for anyone listening, to check in with yourself, see what's valuable to you. Do you really want to take care of people? Do you want that money in the long run? There's things like that. But if you're too worried about other things, like whether you're going to be happy or maybe you just want more something stable, it's good that you kept that in mind, Brian.
Oh, and I always wanted to be involved whenever I was going to have a family. Like my parents were. My parents went to my band concerts. They went to baseball games, track meets. That was something that I wanted to be around for. I didn't want to just be sitting at the hospital or sitting at home on call or risk just missing major life events just because of that career choice. I wasn't willing to give that potential up, so I just went a different way.
Oh, cool deal. And so, all your schooling, if I caught it correctly, you said you went to Utah Tech for?
Yep, so I did all my bachelor's and my undergrad there. I got my master's online at Weber State University, but everything to actually like get my career, I was able to do in my hometown at Dixie State, now Utah Tech. So I was able to do everything local and for a reduced price. It just took me a little bit longer just because I was working full time while doing school part time, so that I could just make the monthly payments and not have to get a student loan for any of that.
That's good. Be all totally clear of that. Once you got your degree, you don't have to be like, oh, now it's time to pay money.
Nope. Nope. Did that for my master's. No student loan for the master's, but it's nice to be able to work my job that I got my bachelor's for and say that I don't own any money on that.
Yeah, you get to have a forward progress. You don't feel like you're just slacking more stuff on the back burner. Be like, oh, the pile keeps growing. I'll get to that later. And for anyone listening, if you're like, well, where the hell is Utah Tech? It's changed its names a couple times. It's changed its mascots a couple times, but St. George, Utah, the southwest corner, it's their college, now university there. So if you're curious about the possibilities there, they tout themselves as being the cheapest or one of the cheapest schools that you can get your education from, at least in Utah. So there's that little snippet of info there. On the topic of time, like being able to, in your opinion, be present in whatever family you're gonna have, or even now, do you feel like with the job that you have, you do have the ability to clock out and be able to hang out with whoever in your life, friends, family, and such, that you can do that relatively consistently?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. It's really easy to just clock out and kind of mentally check out. I don't have to sit there and think about, you know, if I left my patient hanging or if I missed something or whatever reason, but I'm able to clock out, go home, and not mentally be stressed about the job that I just left for the day. So it's easy to have that work-life balance, and being engaged to another healthcare worker. So sometimes you kind of miss out on a little bit because they have their shift requirements and I have mine. But for the most part, it's way easy to just clock out and be done for the day and not stress about it.
So this sounds like there's a lot of positives to your work, your job, that you get to still help people in a little bit easier on you way as far as, the work-life balance, and still get a decent pay. It's not like you're getting dirt money down there. I'm wondering, for anyone who gets curious about doing MedLab, are there any things that you would call negatives or hesitations for people? Or like, hey, if you're curious about this, keep in mind that blank is involved and you need to be okay with that.
think a lot of people get turned off about the thought of having to work with, other people's blood, urine, stool, or whatever body parts that might get sent down.
All the things that come out.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what you're gonna get. There's been a few times where I've seen just the leg below the knee come. That doesn't go to my department, but there's just, you don't expect that all the time. Um, I think to keep in mind that day to day, it's mostly just blood in little tubes or urine in tubes. I'm not. It's not like a crazy scene down there, I guess. Um, it's easy to work with and get used to. It took me a little bit when I first kind of broke into the lab that I was, holding somebody's blood tube. But after a little bit, it was just, oh, it's just part of it. If anything, this is probably cleaner than what the people upstairs in the patient rooms are having to deal with. And I don't have to deal with the patient either. So there's a couple pluses for, in my opinion. I know sometimes that the schooling can be a little daunting if you're looking at like a lab program's either their prerequisites or what it takes to pass the program. I know a lot of programs when you're reading like their website, like the intro to the program, they talk a lot about rotation hours and a certification exam. So I know that's put off a couple of people as a thought of having to be certified and or the rotation. Some
Hmm.
programs will do their rotation hours a bit differently than mine. So a couple of programs will do like lecture lab on one topic, say it's like microbiology. You'll do the lab lecture, and then for a few weeks you'll go do your rotation. So they kind of break it up for you. Because I
Oh,
know a lot of people will worry about taking like time off of work. So there are some programs that will work with that. I just noticed that's pushed a lot of people away from it, or they think about the national certification exam. You don't necessarily have to take that. It's just one of those things like you went through the program and they qualify you to take that exam. You might as well take it and get paid more since you're already doing the exact same work. I wouldn't want to do my current job for fewer dollars an hour. That's just a couple of things that I've known people to kind
yeah.
of change their mind about the program.
Are those certifications and such, is it, in your opinion, are they hard tests? Like, are these like MCAT level things, or is it kind of more just the pressure of it that can get to people?
Well, I don't know if it's like MCAT level. I haven't taken the MCAT level, so I don't think I could accurately speak to that. But I do think the test is hard. It's adaptive. So if you are super smart at one section, you'll get like the minimum number of questions, and if you get them all right, it doesn't give you any more. It's going to hammer the other sections that you might not be the best at. So like, I think I got maybe like 5 to 10 blood bank related questions, and then I didn't see any more blood bank questions for the other like 90 questions that I had to answer. I was getting like what felt like 20 to 30 microbiology questions and I knew going in I was like this is my weak point and they're going to expose it and they
I
kind
didn't
of
give it
did
to you.
and since it's adaptive like the first question's easy so you just go oh A and then the next one's like case study here you go this is what they came in the ER for what what are some of the potentials and you're just kind of like oh it's only question two. This is going to be a long 4 hours,
You gotta sit there
but
and think.
it's adaptive. So if you're just an ace in your class, your test is probably going to be harder than somebody who's maybe not. But you have to get like a minimum of a 40% pass in order to just pass. So I think I got like
40.
I got like a 46 or something like that, just because that micro dragged me.
Hell yeah.
I was still able to pass it. It just says pass or fail, and then it'll send you your results like later. But I do
Mm.
think that the pressure is just there for that test because you study for it for however many semesters your program is, and they like work you to get to the point where you can pass that exam. So you just have the pressure, and then you go in, and then it's just adaptive. So I would definitely think it's um, hard and that the pressure's there, but I wouldn't say that it was ever impossible. Like I've had a few people who have failed it once or even twice, and then the third time they got it because they went and restudied their weak points and they were able to pass it.
No matter what, it's still gonna be, it's not gonna like anyone's gonna walk in and just breeze through it. It'll still They'll still give you a chance to scratch your head and be like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, yeah, I definitely thought so. And you're just at a testing center, and they tell you don't look around because they'll think you're cheating. So you're just, I was just there staring at the computer screen, just kind of going, "Oh God, oh God, this is so hard. I hope I pass." And then I just remember
I want this to be over
hitting
now.
this like the submit button, and it was just like pass. And I just went, oh, okay, I can go home. I can go tell my employer that I passed, and they can pay
Everything's
me.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any future career goals in mind? I assume still in the vein of medical lab. Is there anywhere that you can branch off? Is it pretty much, are you at the top level of med lab tech, or how much growth do you have and want?
Well, I do know there's a lot of growth. So just like within like the immediate lab section, you can kind of go like I'm just a general lab tech. There's like supervisor, which would be next up, manager. There's directors. We've even had a few directors go on to be like operations officers, either at the same company or at different companies. So you're not just stuck in your little bubble. So I do know that there is a
Hmm.
route to go up. There is a ladder. Um, Sometimes I think it might be just a bit harder because labs kind of just the redheaded stepchild at a lot of hospitals. So they're out of sight, out of mind. Um, so sometimes I think it seems like there's a barrier for that. But um, my goal would be to climb that ladder. I don't have like a set goal so much as I just want to use my masters and use what I've learned for that. And I've opened one pediatric hospital. I would like to be in a position to keep opening other hospitals and other labs. So I'm just kind of trying to work my way up the chain so that I can continue to do that.
For the masters, do you know already about how long that process takes? Is it like a 1 year little ditty? Is it 3 years of more hands-on stuff, or how's that all go?
That's just dependent on the student and then the university. I didn't get my master's in medical lab science. I ended up getting my master's in healthcare administration, and I did that through Weber State, and they had in person full time, online full time, and then like online part time. I just opted to take the 2 year route, do that online, do it full time, and I was able to jam that out while also working full time night shift. So I was able to utilize some of the downtime that I would have at night and jot up my papers or my presentations or do all my reading, this and that, in order to get that done. So I was able to do that in 2 years, but some people can do it as long as they want or faster, depending on the college that they go to.
Well, it's good that there's a benefit to having the graveyard shift. You know, you can double dip your time sometimes.
Yep. Sometimes, some nights I couldn't, because it'd be crazy busy, like a holiday, and somebody blows their hand off with the firework, and they need blood. And I was in the blood bank at the time, so
Naturally.
there was many a holidays where uh, a motor vehicle accident kept me busy, or a kid ate a battery, and that kept me busy. And there's just a handful of things where you think you'll have the time to do your homework, and then you don't have time anymore. Uh, so I still had to have good time management, but it was definitely a lot easier, I think, having the graveyard shift, just because there was a lot more potential for downtime in order to do that. So I think that was why I was able to jam that out in 2 years.
So overall, for someone else who might be curious about doing like med lab tech type careers, like even if it's 1 to 10 or generally it's great or it kind of sucks, Utah Tech and Weber, would you say are generally a positive program? They have some limitations. Any kind of opinions do you have on those two?
Um, I think one of the positives about Utah Tech was, and it might have changed since I graduated, was that they only did in person full time. So it was really good to have that one on one teacher time, especially with some of the more in depth lectures and labs. You don't necessarily get that all the time with online programs. But
Hmm.
sometimes the positives for those online programs is you can just do one or two classes a semester and just solely focus on those. Sometimes the hard part with those is you might you might lose what you learned prior to you go to take your exam. So you don't want to like take one class, take 5 years to go do it because you might have a harder time passing that section of the certification exam. But from like the students at Weber that I've met, they've never they've never been like less knowledgeable in any topic. I would say like they always still seem to have like a good education background, a good clinical rotation experience, and I do know that they offer online full time, part time, and in person full time, and I believe part time. So I know that pulls a lot of applicants their way because they don't have to necessarily go to class Monday through Friday. So like a lot of them are, say in their 30s or 40s, have a family and have a full time job. They can still go get their education at Weber because they can tailor the classes to their schedule and not tailor their life to the class schedule. If that makes sense.
Yeah, they get a little more variety and choice on how it all gets to play out.
Yeah.
I guess all that really leaves it to is the big old gotcha question at the end of the interviews that I do now. You get to have one redo of whatever size, whether it's really tiny or really big, anything that's not before high school. You get to remember one thing going back in time, be like, oh, I gotta remember that I want to go to this school and get this program, or I gotta remember that I need to take this test before I do this other thing, or really anything that in your educational career that if you could have changed, you would, but you only get one. You can take a second.
It's just like, there's like two to three that I would change. Just trying to think of what the big one is. I think if I could change one thing, it would be, I would say, I guess, get myself to focus on my classes earlier in my college career out of high school. So like first year or two, when it was just like those super gen ed prereq classes. I didn't take some of the ones as seriously as I should have, so I've had to go back and repeat some of those courses and waste that time and that money. If I could change one thing and knowing it, it would be like, hey, you need to put this much more time and effort into studying the material so that I could, pass it the first time with a good grade instead of a C. If I could go back and make it so that I can get a B or an A, and then progress my timeline longer and be done in 4 years instead of six. That is what I would change, just so I could have entered the career field faster and started making better money earlier on. I think that would just put me 2 3 years ahead of where I am now, career wise and like life goal wise. That's what I think I would change.
Well, good. And the only reason I ask everyone these questions is because, anyone that's in high school or an early college that might be listening in, obviously we were there. So it's one of those things where it's like, we know exactly how it felt to just be doing the thing and being and knowing how it should get done and how you feel and be like, I got it, whatever. So the odds of this little conversation being anything that's gonna be like, oh, that kicks my ass and I just need to go do the thing, whatever. Most people are probably still gonna suck it up a bit their first couple of years. That it's
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
the college experience in a way. I don't, this is just meant to be another exposure to be like, hey, if you want to be, like how you said greatly there at the end of like getting into the career field faster. If you want that, maybe just like do college really good and do it once, so they can get the 4 year thing done so that you can go start making the money that you want so bad.
Well, and I know you and I both, when we got out of high school, we went into college kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of stupid and cocky and like, here's our plan. This is what we're doing. I'm doing this. This is exactly what I've always wanted, or, whatever the reasons be. And then, that first semester two hit or, year two hits, and you're just like, oh, I went in cocky and got punched in the face by that class. And now I got to spend however many hundreds or thousands of dollars to do it again and waste my time. And it's just, if I wish I could make myself not that way, just so I could have utilized my time a lot better and just be a few years ahead of where I am now. I would just approach it differently because I thought it would be as easy as high school, and it wasn't. And then just had to get a wake up call. And I know every high schooler leaving, going to college, just kind of thinks that they're the shit and that they have it all together, and that they know more. But then you start seeing that tuition bill be a little higher than it needs to be, or your classmates are now a class ahead of you, or they also did the same thing and mucked it all up, and they're in the class with you repeating. So it's just like I would I would go back and be like, hey, just focus. Like what you're wasting your time. Your time management isn't that great. Your focus needs improvement, and if I could just tell myself that or show myself, you could have saved this much time and money if you just were just a bit more, I want to say, like adulty or professional, I guess, and just took care of business from the start instead of dicking around.
Yeah, I remember that first freshman year semester, that first fall, whatever, and I got like a 2.97 GPA, which may not sound all that bad for some people, but then you find out like your scholarship needs you to have a 3.0, and you just start freaking out for the entire next semester, making sure you get your grades half decent and da 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 da. And it was really mostly just because I didn't study and stuff for tests the first time. So like B, 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 but then you get a C, and that takes you right off of
And
3.0,
then
and you're just
you
like,
just threw
oh,
your
if I
scholarship
just
away.
did a little bit more.
And I needed like a 3.25, like just to get like 2 grand off a semester. And I was like 3.25. That was easy. I got a 3.99 every freaking year in high school,
Yeah.
no matter if it was a class like an AP class or a Gen class or whatever. And then you go and even just something as dumb as like history of music. Like I had to take like a music class just for like my fine art category, or like my English 10-10, 20-10. Like I got my butt kicked by a few of those papers, and or math. It's like I wish I would have known I should have studied like a formula better, because that was all the test was, and then it just tink, 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 there goes your GPA, and then there goes your scholarship after only having it for like a year and a half.
Yeah, the whole paradigm shift for there's high school GPA where, I've said this on another episode with another interviewee that A kind of feels like the standard. Like you either get an A or you got some version of fucking it up. You got A, perfect, that's standard. You got a B, all right, you messed up a little bit. You got C, you messed up a lot. D and F, you just bombed the whole thing. That's not healthy. We're not saying like that's how it should be. Like, oh, cool, yeah, always expect to get A's. If you expect C to be like the average, B doing good, and A is like the smarty, college is going to be a much easier experience for you. Like, yes, there's going to be some scholarship restrictions for a lot of us where you kind of need to think that B is your standard to get that money. But for most people, or any of those that don't need to worry so much about that, whether you're at a cheaper university or community college, maybe your scholarship is linked to something other than your grades, whatever it have be, don't worry too much about always getting the A. That's a good thing to strive for, but think of it as like the dessert of your meal. It's something you have every once in a while. You savor it, and you're like, oh, that was great, that was good. And then the rest, the meat and potatoes, is your B's and C's. Not for everyone, but if you expect that to be the standard, anything better is extra credit, and you get to just enjoy it thoroughly.
And I thought I was dumb for getting a B or a B minus, and then come to find out that a lot of programs, if you want to get in, you need just like a 2.0 or a 2.5 GPA. And I was at like a 3.1 by the time I finished everything. So like, oh, well, I was more than okay. I was just thinking that I had a higher standard just because of how I was in high school. But
Right.
expecting B's, B pluses, being okay with B minuses, for the most part, you'll be okay. I can't speak
Hell,
to
how many
everyone.
times I'd be happy if I had a B minus on a physics test or whatever. Holy, instead of getting D's, like here we are celebrating getting a D on a physics test. Be like, oh, like the memes and stuff where people talk about like the engineers and stuff when they get like a 30% on a quantum test, and they're like, yeah, I did it. Yeah, that's legit, and it's dumb, but it's funny in a way to go through it and be like, oh my god, it's literally like this.
Or yeah, I get a lab report that one week was just written to hell with red ink for like an organic chemistry lab, and then the next week There's just a little less red. It's just the small wins that make the most difference and change your
Yeah.
experience.
Well, cool. So for our last little bit here, I'll give the time over to you for a moment if you'd like. Is there anything that you wished I've asked you in this interview, or if you're one to inspire the 14 or 4 million people that are listening, this is your chance to give your big speech if you have one, or are you done? Any you do this is your chance to say anything or not at all.
You know, I would probably say to a lot of people it's okay to either do school part time or just one or two classes at a time, or take a year off after high school to work or go go figure out yourself a little bit. You don't have to go straight from high school to college, and I think that's okay. I don't think that's talked about enough. You don't have to go straight from one to the other. I think it's healthy for people to go explore what they want to do, go travel if they can, or even just like sometimes college isn't necessarily the answer for everybody. Like there's trade schools, you can go do that. You don't have to go to college just to like hit the minimum standard, I guess, so to speak. There's other routes to a happy life and success, and it doesn't all just revolve around what university you went to and what your degree is and what your GPA was. Because once you're done with that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very wise thing, especially with this academic advising podcast. You know, some people might kind of get into the rhythm and rut of like, okay, so high school, college, more college done. High school, college, more college done. And it doesn't have to be like that at all. It's just because you get your high school diploma or GED, whatever, and that's all you're going to have. That doesn't make you any lesser of a human being, or you're just not as going to be as smart or useful in society. That's not necessarily true. That's going to give you all kinds of different avenues. Like college does provide more sometimes, depending on your degree type. Like if you want to go into medicine, you're going to get a lot more options if you go to
You're
medical
going to
school.
college.
Yeah, you're going to college if you want to do anything legitimately medicine based instead of just being in a hospital. So you got to kind of balance out what you want to do, what parts of that career you want, whether it's the money, it's the work life balance, it's what you're physically doing, like you're outside, you're helping people, you're by yourself. Some people want a job because you don't have to interact with anyone else. That's valid too. And to take a time to figure that out instead of doing it in college for all you got tuition going, that could be really wise. Like taking a year off. I know lots of people will say, "Oh, I hated that I took that year off because then it got so hard to get back into classes and such." And it goes, "Yeah, but at least you decided what you were going to do and you felt stronger about it." More often, I'd imagine people who do that break go into college and they're like, "Okay, I'm going to do music now. I took my year, I played around in some bands and stuff, and I just want to have a more legitimate background." And they go in, and I imagine feel a lot more satisfied with their choice because they took the time to figure it out first instead of just being like, "Oh, I think this is what I want. I think I want to go into medicine. I think I want to be a doctor. That sounds good. I'm good at it, so maybe I should do that." And then lo and behold, you take an astronomy class, and that changes your mind, and blah blah blah.
A personal experience for you, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. Someone might have like a real tight connection to that specific example I somehow pulled out of my ass.
There's been more than a handful of times where somebody like working in the lab, they have their MLS degree. Uh, More often than not, that wasn't what they wanted from the get go, and
Mm.
they'll be going to college for they think med school. Initially like me, kind of. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. A lot of times people change, or they were going for nursing, and then they do like a class or like a couple like shadowing rotations where they go to the hospital or like the nursing home, and then they just quickly go like, nope, not for me. I think a lot of people have just kind of like gone in a circle for a bit, and then they would fall into lab, and they kind of go, I was going to do this, and then I didn't want to, and then they immediately say they went and talked to their academic advisor, like, what should I do? And then they'll kind of point them in the direction. I kind of wish that a lot of people would take the time to self reflect before, just going and uh, spending a lot of time and money just trying a bunch of different things. Like go talk to your advisor, see what kind of programs that your university, or talk to other university advisors to see what they have going on, because they'll all point you in maybe a slightly different direction, but at least you kind of have the sense of direction from that point. Um, that's just one thing that I've noticed working in my field is they wanted to do dental hygiene or X-ray or med school, and they figure out that they don't want to touch people's dirty, nasty teeth or get have people try to punch them while they're working as a nurse in the hospital, and they say they still want to, do healthcare or do this and that, and finally, like, they find a good advisor that kind of gives them a roadmap, so to speak.
Or maybe they find a really good podcast about academic advising that inspires them to try another avenue. You know, that's why we bring in all these weird guests where we have astrophysicists, we've got medical personnel. We're gonna have on the next episode, depending on how the order this plays, but the next person I'm interviewing is gonna be a finance, military guy. So there's variety out there, people. You've always got choices. It's just usually a matter of what you want, what money can you spit out, depending on the schooling, and how much confidence you have for all that.
Well said.
Well, thank you very much for coming on to the show today, Brian. I very much appreciate it. You speak very well, despite not having a communications major. You're able to talk as if you've been on a podcast before. So good job.
No, this is my first time on a podcast. How exciting!
For sure. We'll see you later, and everyone else listening, have a wonderful time. We'll talk to you later. Bye bye for now.